Baha'is believe that all of these holy prophets throughout time, the Buddha, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, are continuing God's message, and that Baha'is are followers of all of them, and also followers of a new holy teacher, a new divine teacher called Baha'u'llah, whose name means the glory of God. And Baha'u'llah lived in Persia and the Middle East in the mid-1800s and brought his message of unity for all of humanity. And some of those teachings that I went over earlier were some of his teachings. So when I started to really read the works of Baha'u'llah, that's when a light bulb went on, and I realized that I had really jettisoned the good with the bad, and that I needed to redefine my faith for myself. And at this time, there were two writings of the Baha'i Faith that I want to underline and emphasize. And Anissa, if we could put up that first quote. The first one was that one of the central teachings of the Baha'i Faith is the independent investigation of truth. So this is a quote by Baha'u'llah's eldest son, Abdu'l-Baha, who was a very holy man in his own right and was the leader of the Baha'i Faith for many decades. And here's a quote about this idea that we need to find the truth for ourselves. Another new principle revealed by Baha'u'llah is the injunction to investigate truth, that is to say, no man should blindly follow his ancestors and forefathers. Nay, each must see with his own eyes, hear with his own eyes and ears, and investigate the truth himself in order that he may follow the truth instead of blind acquiescence and imitation of ancestral beliefs. There's a lot more to this teaching than just this quote, but I will say that I had a realization, like I went on my spiritual path and I needed to find the truth for myself. I needed to greatly suffer and had a lot of setbacks and trauma and ups and downs during that time, but I needed to find the truth for myself. Now, this quote may seem a little obvious to some young people watching out there. I see Ben Altair and Roshni Mehra watching this, and they may say, oh, well, that's pretty obvious. Find the truth for yourself, duh. But this is a revolutionary concept coming from the mid-1800s from the Middle East. Find the truth for yourself? That simply did not happen anywhere in the world, let alone Persia and the Middle East, the Caucasus, Palestine, the areas that Baha'u'llah was living in. That absolutely was not an option. If your great-grandfather went to the mosque and your grandfather went to the mosque and your father went to the mosque, then doggone it, you're going to go to that same mosque. If they were cobblers, then you're going to be a cobbler. You don't have a choice in the matter. You don't say, like, I'm going to spend a gap year being a kayak instructor and check out Buddhism. Like, no, that's not an option. It's very much an option these days. But I think the important thing for me was a realization that that's the journey that I had been on, and that's okay. And number two, part of that is, and I think the important thing for the young people watching today is that no man should blindly follow his ancestors and forefathers, it says in the quote, and investigate the truth for himself instead of the truth of blind acquiescence. And I think, and we can get rid of the quote right now, Anissa, go back to the video. The important thing is to, nowadays, I think the more important thing about the independent investigation of truth is to look outside what society is telling you. Because society is trying to lay a lot of kind of BS on everybody. And it's no one's fault. I'm not blaming a particular political party or politician or cabal of men that are controlling things with puppet strings or anything like that. It's just the way society has developed. We live in a very materialistic society that tells us that happiness can be had through buying more stuff. It's commercialization, materialism. It's part of the perils of capitalism. There's some positive things to capitalism and there's some drawbacks to capitalism. But this constant need to convince people to buy things in order to be happy and satisfied is one of the drawbacks. The idea that status, being liked, getting likes on social media and having a high status will also make us happy and fulfill us. There's so many things that are just backwards that our society is telling. There's many, many things that racial injustice and social injustice that's going on. I could go into a whole talk about it, but I think the thing I want to highlight for young people is, as you look for the truth for yourself, please cast a very cold, keen, almost critical eye on what society is telling you is true and what society is telling you is important. Because the one of the things that society has done is kind of eliminated a spiritual foundation for how we do things. So it is super important to understand that we are spiritual beings on a spiritual journey, and love and unity and peace and compassion one to another is the most important thing to build both our personal relationships and our foundationally our social relationships and culture off of.